All right, well, we have another case study on VVPR. This was the same stock that I traded yesterday, and today we got continuation. Now, we don't have that every day, so this is a special case study specifically on the continuation setup. All right, so let's jump into the screen share here. We're going to go full screen on the slide deck. All right, VVPR. So how to find continuation setups is a little different from how I would typically find a fresh momentum stock. So when VVPR was on the scans yesterday, the way I found it initially was when it hit the high-a-day momentum scanner. So these are my high-a-day momentum scanners. I've got two screenshots, one here and one here. It's the same scanner, just slightly different times. So yesterday, I saw VVPR hitting the high-a-day momentum scanner, and it was already up like 30-40%, which made it at the time maybe the second or third leading percentage gainer. And VVPR ended up going up over 300% yesterday, which made it the #1 leading gainer in the market. It was in first place. And so it had a lot of eyes on it. A lot of people were watching it, and it continued to give opportunities really all day long. We can look at we'll look at the chart in a second. So VVPR was super strong yesterday, and it closed a little weak. Towards the end of the day, it started to pull back. And I looked at the chart. I saw how it closed yesterday, but I didn't really think that we were going to get any trades on it today. So this morning, all of a sudden, it starts hitting my scanner right here actually, it hit a little earlier, but this is just where I grabbed the screenshot from. It was about 575, 585, 590. And I pull this up and I see we had this headline here, and this was actually posted earlier. But so Vivo Power declares capital management strategy, including a stock buyback program up to $5 million. Hello. Okay, so this is really important. When a company has like a really strong day in the market and it goes up 200, 300%, what we usually expect is that the company is going to take that as an opportunity to sell some shares onto the market into all that volume to raise more capital, right? A lot of these small cap companies, they're not super well capitalized. They need to raise money. And on a day when you have, let's just check to see how much volume we had yesterday on VVPR. So yesterday on VVPR, let's see, total volume was over 100 million shares. 100 million shares. So let's just say they could have sold 2, 3, even 4 million shares into the market, and that would only be 3-4% of the total volume on the day. They could have easily done that. And if they'd sold 4 million shares at $6, they could have raised, they could raise $24 million for the company. That's huge, right? So it's no surprise why these companies will sell shares into the market. And when they do that, it's called a secondary offering because the initial public offering is when they sell their first block of shares. And then during secondary offerings, which are just any offering subsequent to the initial offering, those you could do 10 of them and they're all going to be called secondary offerings. That's an opportunity for them to sell more shares. So that's what we would sort of expect. And to be honest, that's what a lot of there's a strategy of short sellers who specifically look for stocks like this that they think need to raise capital and are going to do a secondary offering to short them, because usually when the news comes out of the offering, they'll say, for instance, sold 5 million shares or 4 million shares at an average price of $6 in a direct offering. So price at the market, right? So when they do an offering like that, then people are like, all right, they're diluting the value of the company because they're selling more shares. They're printing more money, right? You're printing more shares. And so now the float goes from like 1 million up to 7 million or 6 million or whatever it is. And then the real question is, what was the price they sold at? Now, what sometimes happens, what usually actually happens, is these companies will find an investment firm that's willing to buy a whole block of shares. They're like, oh, you want to raise $20 million? Okay, I'll give you 20 million, but you're going to give me the stock at 50% of its current trading value. And the company's like, ooh, that's not going to be good for the company, but we really need the 20 million. How about 60% of current value? and then, or 70%, and then they go back and forth and settle it, whatever it is. But it's always at a discount. And the discount is what offsets the risk of the investment bank, the institutional investors throwing $20 million at this company. So they throw 20 million at him, let's just say, but it's priced at $4. And when that happens, usually the price will go right back down to 4 because now they've sold shares at that price. So those are the scenarios, either priced directly selling onto the market, which they can do, or selling through like a sort of private placement to an institutional trader. Okay, so then literally the exact opposite of that type of headline is when the company says, hey, we're going to buy $5 million worth of stock. Now, one thing to be aware of is that a company can create a stock buyback program, but they're not obligated to actually buy back any shares, right? See, it says right here, the stock buyback program does not obligate the company to purchase any shares of its common stock. So it's kind of just a fluffy headline, but they could if they want to. And it certainly is communicating it's a little bit of posturing, right? It's communicating some really strong sentiment that the company has. Now, if we want to get into the details here, we could actually go, let's see, VVPR. Let's just see. So they have a shelf registration. Look at the amended. So $18 million ordinary shares, debt security warrants rights. So this will allow us to issue from time to time at prices and terms to be determined at or prior to the time of the offering, up to $18 million in any combination of securities. So ordinary shares, warrants, debt securities, et cetera, et cetera. So they have this is a shelf registration, which gives them the right to sell. And they have to do this because basically what this does is it puts all of the current shareholders on notice that, hey, this company is reserving the right to, raise money. So big companies like, I don't know, Apple or Netflix or Google or something like that, they're not going to have shelf registrations. They don't need to raise money. They might do bonds and stuff like that, corporate bonds, but they're not going to sell shares the way these companies would. So they, on the one hand, have an actual shelf registration, and it's not that old. It's been amended fairly recently. And they amended it back here. Oh, just changing some stuff here. So anyways, so they come out with this headline here that, $5 million buyback program. And naturally, the market likes that. And naturally, short sellers are like, uh-oh, this could be a problem. And that news comes out right here at about 8 a.m. So as soon as that news came out, I executed my first trade with a purchase at $6.07, which is right here on this arrow. And just to jump back in the slides for 1 second. So what I did on this was, so first, the stock hits my scanner. All right, so it's hitting my scanners, it's moving up, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm already familiar with the stock. I'd already looked at the chart. I even had it on my side chart already. So I was like, okay, we're popping up. And then I see that we've got news, and I'm like, okay, it's game time. Now, on the daily chart, I know we had a big green candle yesterday. I know we're above the 200, which is fine. I'm cautious buying right into the 200 resistance, but if we're above it, I'm fine with that. So no issue on the daily chart. The float of 1.3 million shares is fine. For those of you guys that maybe are new, tuning in for the first time, I'll give you a little breakdown of what I generally look for in a stock. So number one, I prefer the price to be under 20. I prefer the float to be also under 20. So it's just easy to remember 2020, 20 million shares, $20 price. But I know that under 10 is like, stronger, and under 5 is stronger, and under 1 is like, can be, crazy strong. These can make huge moves. So, I'm just aware of that. I like to see generally high relative volume. Now, this is going to be an exception, and we'll talk about that in a second. Number 4, I like to see that it's already up a minimum of 10%. And number 5, I like to see that there's a news catalyst. So this met all of those criteria. So then from that point, I'm looking for an entry. So I pull up the chart and I'm looking first at the 5-minute, including all of yesterday's price action, because I don't want to lose sight of what happened yesterday. So as I look at yesterday's price action, I'm reminded of the fact that there were some nasty rejection candles, notably this one right here, but also, a little bit right here and kind of a little rejection here. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess 695 was the high of that candle. And then I connected these two candles here because I just sort of thought, if we came up to this level, people would probably look at that as ascending resistance. So I pulled sort of this chart together pretty quickly. It turns out, that as it was squeezing up right here up to 6, this is when the news was coming out, volume was coming in, and this is where I was like, okay, it's time to take my first trade. So my first entry was actually a micro pullback. Those of you who are familiar with the micro pullback strategy, you know that this is the basis for fast trading. When we have a stock that has breaking news, this is the fastest way to get in. There will be a link pinned to the top of the comments and at the top of the description where you can download my micro pullback strategy as a PDF. That's an instruction guide. You can print it out, put it next to your desk, and you can use it in your own trading. So what I'm looking for on a micro pullback, there's my green, is we get the first pop here. And usually what happens is I'm watching the level 2. We've got the bid and we've got the offer right here. So the bid, for instance, is 595. The offer is, I'm going to do 599. 599. And so this is our level 2 window. So the stock has just hit my scanner. And what kind of orders am I seeing going through the tape? Because the price is moving up, I'm seeing green orders. Green orders are going through on the tape. So the tape is the time in sales. The way I have it displayed in my trading platform, it's just right next to my actual level 2. So I see both of them at the same time. And then what often happens is we'll get that first pop, and then we'll get just a moment where the level 2 sort of pauses. We might have a couple orders that go through between the spread. Those could be in black or in white, depending on if you're on a light theme or a dark theme. We may even have a couple of red orders, a couple orders that go through on the sell side. And then, so we have a moment of pause right here. It's sort of a moment of pause. So the candle hasn't even closed yet. It's just like a moment of the price sort of being sideways. And then when I start to see green coming in, new orders in green, I punch it. And that's where I buy. And so that micro pullback can at times look like this. You'd be like, I don't even see the pullback. And it's like, it was so brief. You would only see it if you were looking at the tape or maybe looking at a 10-second chart or a tick chart. Sometimes, however, the micro pullback will be more defined. And, we'll have a move up here, and then we'll actually have, a small red candle here, and then it'll punch higher. So that's possible too, and I'm okay with either one of them. But in this case, the pullback was very, very brief. So we had a very brief pullback, and that for me was the opportunity to take my starter position. And I was adding at about 607, and it pops up to a high of 620 right here. And then since I'm already in, I added right here at 620. Because now we're getting another sort of micro pullback, and I was feeling confident, and it squeezes up to 630. And at this point right here, I crossed $1,000 of profit on the day. Now, something that I've been talking about that I've been using as a strategy to sort of keep a little bit of a handle on my emotions, because my emotions in trading have been getting kind of big in the last month, and that's been in part, or maybe quite a large part, because in January was sort of slow for me. I was up $40,000 in profit, and then in February I was up $116,000 in profit, approximately, something like that. And then in the first week of March I was up another 30, and then I gave it back in 2 days, and then I rallied back up, and then I dropped back down again. And so right now, my account is probably right about here. And because I've been in this sort of drawdown for the last couple weeks, I've been feeling a little bit of stress and pressure and frustration. And so I said to myself, what I want to do is start each day with smaller share size and first just try to get a cushion on the day with small size. And if I can't get a cushion with small size, I'm not even going to scale up. But if I can first make $1,000 trading with smaller share size, 5,000 shares, max position, then I'll lean in. And that's exactly what I did today. Now, actually, on my first trade today, I went red by $600. It wasn't on VVPR, it was on a different stock. I went red 600. And then I took another trade on it and made back 300. So I was red 300. And then I took another trade and I was up 300 on that stock. So, but I didn't increase my share size when I was red. I still traded with the same share size, but I went from first down 600 to up 300. And then I took another trade and I was up 400. And then I started trading VVPR and that put me up over 1,000 on the day. Once I crossed 1,000, I was like, okay, now if I want to scale up, I'm free to scale up. So these are my first trades on VVPR. Now, the problem with VVPR was that the relative volume was light. And what that means was that yesterday we had 120 million shares of volume. Today we have only 33 million shares of volume. So if we look at the relative volume yesterday versus the prior day, the relative volume on the prior day was 50,000 shares, and then it goes to 120 million. That's crazy. That's a huge jump. And obviously it's because of news. But now the relative volume versus the previous day here is actually lower, right? It's actually significantly lower. Well, yesterday's prior volume was 120 and today we're at 33. However, the relative volume versus the 30-day average is still high today. So it's high relative to 30 days. It's low relative to yesterday. And what sometimes happens is stocks that were kind of really thickly traded on the previous day, when they start to come up, there's a lot of people who are maybe still holding from the previous day that are going to be selling. You can have some short covering, but you can also have new shorts adding and shorts getting stubborn, which means they're going to be taking larger positions, maybe doing order spoofing. And so that can make these a little bit more difficult to trade on day two. So typically for me, day two is not when I'm going to do as well. Now, actually, that's not the case today. Today, I actually made more than I made yesterday on VVPR, but it's not typically going to be that way. So the relative volume was a little bit lower, and the main issue that I had was that, we got this first pop from 6 up to 630, which was nice. And then we sort of got these really small breakouts. Like right here, we broke 630, but we didn't go to 650. We stopped at like 644, and it flushes. And it comes back up, and it kind of stops again. And it sort of tries to pull away here, and it does. It makes its way up to 680, and then it kind of stalls out. It pushes a little higher, sort of stalls out a little higher. Little chop up here around 730. Finally, it's able to break. We had this topping tail candle right here that hit 846, and then it flushes down. And it's just like, this is weird. And if you notice this blue line here, that blue line is actually, let's see. So what was that drawn from? Let me just check. Oh, sorry, that blue line was something else. But let me connect to this one here for you. So it's approximately like this. So this became a level in play right in this area. Sometimes these are hard to snap on. Anyways, that's fine. So I knew that we were going to have probably a little bit of this ascending resistance line. Ascending is the lines moving up. And so we kind of ran into it here. We were able to get above it, and then we were back below it, and then we blasted back above it. And coming into the open, my final trade, which was one of my best trades of the day in a way, was when I bought this bottoming tail right here. I just punched it for 1,000 shares. It's not a huge position. I was just like, I'm going to start with 1,000 shares. And then it breaks 9. And I was like, I'm going to add another 1,000 shares. And it breaks 920. I said, I'm going to add another 1,000 shares. And I was taking profit up here at 960. It dips down. I held. It comes back up. I took a little more profit up here, a little more profit up here. And that was a really clean trade. And the thing is, because I had such a nice cost basis down here, I felt like I could afford to give it some room. So this also is a reminder of how having the right entry, it can make all the difference, because now you're in a position of confidence. Earlier in the move, I kept buying kind of for the high a day break, and it would break by like 4 cents and then stall out. And I was like, I just got in at the top. I'm in too heavy. and I would stop out. And then it would kind of grind back up and go higher. And that happened quite a bit with this one, which I think was because the relative volume was lower. It's sort of a continuation setup. But I found that to be a little bit of a struggle. And I had a little hard time getting myself into the mode of buying some of these deeper dips because I just kept thinking, well, maybe this is over. Maybe it's just gonna go all the way back down. How do I know it's gonna bounce? And I didn't have the conviction. And early on, I didn't have the profit cushion either. So I was really just trying to trade when I felt like it was obvious. Now, if we take a moment to look at the MACD, moving average convergence divergence indicator, at the beginning of the move here, it's certainly open, right? It's open. And then we sort of cross negative right here, and then we come back up. So right here, it does this curl back up. It punches back up here. And this was actually very clean. So a nice move here. And one of the things that I've been saying is that as an indicator, just to help me focus on trading the front side of the move, when I see the MACD is crossing negative against the trade, I'm saying I'm not going to buy in this area. So I didn't take any trades in this area because I saw the MACD had moved against the trade. And I just said, I'm going to wait. And if it can get up higher, I'm going to be interested. The MACD will cross over, but it didn't happen. So that was VVPR. In total, locked up $3,917.78, which is great. Up $4,330.61 on the day. Daily goal is 5,000. Went red 600. Not bad. Rallied back up, closing in the green right here. Now, HSDT was the first stock that I traded. And so I'll bring that chart up so we can look at that for a moment. So HSDT, I sat down pretty early this morning, right around 7 a.m., and HSDT was on my scans. It was one of the leading percentage gainers at the time. And I was like, okay, this looks interesting. So on my first trade, I got in right down here, and I was looking for the breakthrough 850. So I got in with 2,500 shares at now I can't remember. I think it was 824. And it pops up to 850. And I was like, nice, this looks good. It drops back down here to break even. And I was like, okay, we have resistance at 850. And usually I try not to stop out because usually it pulls back and then it'll come back up for a second try. And sometimes, as we saw yesterday with VVPR, it'll sort of do multiple attempts before finally breaking. So anyways, I felt like I was in off support. But then on this candle, the flushes all the way down here to 87, right? 787. It bounces back up, and I ended up getting out of the trade at about 805, something like that. So, took a little bit of a loss there. And then it kind of comes back up right here. I was focusing then on the 1 minute chart, and I said, all right, well, what have we got going for us on this? And on the 1 minute, we dropped all the way back down here, and then we came back up. And when we came back up, I got back in here for the breakthrough 820, and we got to move up to 845, and I took my profit. I was like, I'm just going to take that off the table. So I think maybe I made like $150 on that trade, or no, it was that was the $300 winner. I made back half. So I went from down 600 to down 300. And then it's consolidating in this area here, and I actually got back in down here off support. What I was sort of thinking was that the MACD looked like it was curling. I thought it was going to curl to the positive here, and I thought that we were going to get a retest of the pre-market high. But again, it took a couple thousand shares down here at about 780. It goes up to 8. We squeeze up to 810, and I ended up taking some profit at about 805, something like that. It pulls back. It tries to go higher. It pushes a little higher, and I didn't take this trade here. At this point, I felt like it should have already gone, and it was taking too long. So that was it. So only up $334 on this stock. It was not that clean. It ended up being kind of choppy. And then ABIO was halted pre-market and resumes. There was news on it. Let's see. Let's switch time frames here. So ABIO was halted. It resumes. And I jumped in just with actually a really small position just to kind of test the water here. I got filled at Actually, $4.10. It was right down here. It ends up going up to a high of 468. I took my profit off the table as it moved higher and then sold the rest break even. I think I sold half up here at about 450 and then sold the other half flat. So kind of a weird headline, but it seemed like it was moving, so I took a stab at it. So aside from that, you know, what else did we have today? So VVPR, XTIA, this one continued to be strong yesterday, by the way. Put in a nice move after hours, so another one that held up pretty well. That was strong. NXTT put in a little bit of a move today. I didn't trade it. It's a little too light on volume. ADXN, this one was on the scans, very low float. And as I looked at it pre-market, I was like, well, let's keep an eye on it. Big pop and then sell off. But does this look familiar? A big pop and then a sell-off, right? So we've got this pop here and then we sold off. Well, remember back last week, GSTC. No, what was it? Was it this? GCTS? I think this was it. This one, if I've got the right ticker, let's see. So this one had a day where the pre-market chart, it was really interesting because it popped up. I think this is this is the right one. Let's go back here. So look at this. Pre-market pops up, sells off. And then later in the afternoon, it ended up going all the way up to over $50 a share. So is that going to happen on ADXN? I don't know. Probably not. But I just said I'll keep it on watch. I'll put it on a side chart and we'll see what happens. And I think that's the right attitude because you just never know. So overall today, $4,330.61. It's a pretty solid day. And for those of you guys tuning in for the first time, make sure you check out my my micro pullback strategy PDF. That's going to be pinned to the top of the comments and it'll be linked in the description. You can download that, you can print it out, you can start using it in your trading. And as always, I'll remind you that trading is risky. My results are not typical, so manage your risk, take it slow, and make sure if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You do that, and I'll see you back here for my recap tomorrow.